The top stories tonight in Y News. Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco formally took his seat as the new Speaker of the House of Representatives today, while Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano steps down from speakership.
Malacanang welcomes the ratification of the election of Representative Velasco as new House Speaker. Meanwhile, the Duterte administration hopes the proposed 2021 national budget will now be passed on time.
President Duterte approves the one seat apart rule on public transportation. The Department of Information and Communications Technology wants Congress to increase its budget by 18 billion pesos.
Australia's New South Wales Premier is now under fire after admitting personal relations with a disgraced former parliament member.
China has reportedly banned imports of Australian coal, leaving some Australian vessels stuck at Chinese ports as political relations continue to soar. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Tuesday, October 13, 2020. I am Horlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco formally took his seat as the new Speaker of the House of Representatives today, while Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano finally steps down from speakership. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco presided over the reopening of session of the House of Representatives following President Rodrigo Duterte's call for a special session to finish the 2021 budget. During the session today, a motion was made by Pampanga Representative Rimpi Bondoc to make another nominal voting for speakership. This was to legalize the nominal voting made yesterday by the majority at the Celebrity Sports Plaza in Quezon City. After the nominal voting, the 186 votes were immediately ratified to formally acknowledge Velasco as the new Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Visayan Bloc of the House of Representatives, I once again reaffirm our trust and commitment and support behind your leadership.
On behalf of the Bicolano or of the Bicol Bloc, and as manifested yesterday, we now reaffirm our support to the duly elected Speaker of the 18th Congress, the Speaker of the supermajority, Congressman Lord Alan Velasco.
The official mace used yesterday at the sports club was also used during today's session. The session was immediately suspended after parties of the lower house of Congress showed their support to the new Speaker. Meanwhile, Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano announced his irrevocable resignation as the House Speaker earlier today. Through his Facebook Live, Cayetano said he is a good follower and respects the leadership of President Rodrigo Duterte. Cayetano also thanked the President for the opportunity given to him as the House Speaker. He also asked for forgiveness from the President for having a wrong interpretation that he will be the one to tackle and pass the 2021 national budget.
So, Mr. President, if I made a mistake, mali ang reading ko, misunderstood ko na gusto mong ituloy at tapusin ko ang budget, ako'y humihingi ng paumanhin. Hindi ko intention, never, na hindi ka sundin.
The special session of the House of Representatives finally resumed at around 3:24 p.m. with Velasco presiding over the opening. A motion was also made to reconsider the approval of the second reading and bringing the House Bill 7727 or the 2021 General Appropriations Bill back to the period of sponsorship and debate. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, Malacanang welcomes the ratification of the election of Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco as new House Speaker. Meanwhile, the Duterte administration hopes the proposed 2021 national budget will be passed on time. Our palace correspondent Rosa Dicos explains why.
The boxing match has ended. This is the statement of the palace after the election of Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco as the new House Speaker, which has been ratified following days of controversial House Speakership row with now resigned Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano. The palace congratulates Velasco and the members of the House of Representatives on this development.
We look forward to working closely with Speaker Lord Alan Velasco because he is also a very close ally of this administration at tingin ko naman po magpapatuloy ang buong kooperasyon ng Ekotibo at ng Kongreso under the leadership of Congressman Speaker Lord Alan Velasco.
Also, the palace denied President Rodrigo Duterte has something to do with the decision of the majority of lawmakers to support Velasco on the speakership. Although Malacanang believes the president's ultimatum to the lower chamber initiated the action to end the speakership row. The Duterte administration hopes the political battle for leadership in the lower chamber is now finished and the proposed 2021 national budget will be passed on third and final reading within the special session period.
So sana po sang-ayon din sa naitakdanan ng proclamation ni Pangulong Duterte ay matapos at mapasa nila on third and final reading ang budget ngayong darating na Biyernes, which is October 16.
President Duterte met new House Speaker Velasco and former lower chamber leader Taguig Representative Alan Peter Cayetano in Malacanang today. The two agreed during the meeting with the president to work together as one in majority. This is for the timely passage of the 2021 national budget and other priority legislation of the Duterte administration. Rosa Licos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Presidential Communications Operations Office, or PCOO, has denied allegations of red tagging. During today's Senate hearing on the agency's proposed 2021 budget, Senator Coco Pimentel asked the agency about the issue on its budget deliberations at the House of Representatives. Last month, a House committee deferred the hearing of PCOO's budget after lawmakers of the Makabayan bloc slammed the social media posts of PCOO Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy for allegedly tagging them as high-ranking officials of the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, National Democratic Front, or CPP-NPA-NDF. According to PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar, the agency has never committed any red tagging. Andanar had explained before that the said post was published on the personal account of Badoy and not of the PCOO and its attached agency's social media accounts.
The PCOO as an institution has never red tagged any individual.
Undersecretary Badoy, who was also presented at the hearing, claimed that the case and the issue has allegedly been dismissed by the Supreme Court. She added there was no such word as red tagging, and it was the CPP-NPA-NDF that invented the word.
We were already actually brought to court by the NUJP, Gabriela, Rural Missionaries and all that. And up to the Supreme Court, the ruling was that the threat is not real and it's based on amorphous grounds. And that it was found, the ruling of the Supreme Court is that membership into an organization red tag is not an actionable threat. And it was dismissed for lack of evidence. And that red tagging is really actually a word that the CPP-NPA-NDF coined. It's not a real word.
However, the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, or NUJP, denies the statement of Badoy. According to NUJP Chair Nonoy Espina, they have not sued anyone over red tagging. Meanwhile, in response to what Badoy claimed, Senator Richard Gordon has this to say.
They will say they're being red tagged so that they get the attention of the public, and they do get the attention of the public. kung talagang tama yan, then we'll go after you. But hindi naman totoo yun eh. Tingin ko hindi totoo eh.
Senator Gordon further moved to approve and endorse to the plenary the PCOO's proposed budget worth 1.59 billion pesos. He also expressed support for augmenting its budget for the modernization of equipment. IBC 13 also asked for additional 468 million pesos for the upgrade of their transmitters in Manila, Cebu, Davao, and Baguio to widen their audience reach as DepEd programs have been airing on their channel for distance learning.
Malacanang asks Octa Research to submit their recommendations to the Interagency Task Force on Quarantine Classifications. This after the Octa Research team urged the government to impose stricter quarantine classifications or localized lockdown in Bawan, Batangas, Calbayog, Western Samar, and General Trias, Cavite, due to an increasing attack rate of COVID-19 in the past 2 weeks, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque. Instead of making their recommendation public, the research team should forward it to the IATF, the government's policy-making body against coronavirus.
I wish they would refrain from making these recommendations publicly. They can probably endorse or course the recommendations privately to the IATF nang hindi naman po napapangunahan, highlighting the fact that classifications are normally announced no less than the President himself.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that almost 2,000 new cases were reported today, raising the total confirmed cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines to 344,713. The National Capital Region reported the most additional cases with 580, while Cavite, Rizal, and Laguna logged more than 100 new patients each. The number of total active cases increased from yesterday. Now it's close to 45,000. Of that number, 84.2% are in mild condition, while 10.6% are asymptomatic. We have lost 40 more patients. But through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 327 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 293,383, which is among the top 20 most recoveries around the world. Thanks be to God.
The World Health Organization chief calls the idea deliberately letting the virus run free unethical and scientifically problematic. This is in line with recent discussions of so-called herd immunity. Also, another WHO expert highlights the use of bleach in disinfecting surfaces. Nina Armidio reports why.
Herd immunity is a concept used for vaccination, in which a population can be protected from a certain virus if a threshold of vaccination is reached. But the World Health Organization chief on Monday warned against deliberately allowing coronavirus to spread in the hope of achieving so-called herd immunity. He said the idea is ethically problematic.
Herd immunity is achieved by protecting people from a virus, not by exposing them to it. Never in the history of public health has herd immunity been used as a strategy for responding to an outbreak, let alone a pandemic. It's scientifically and ethically problematic.
Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus also clarified that they don't know enough about immunity to COVID-19.
Most people who are infected with the virus that causes COVID-19 develop an immune response within the first few weeks. But we don't know how strong or lasting that immune response is, or how it differs for different people.
The WHO head reiterates what target measures work for countries to fight the spread of the virus.
Prevent amplifying events, protect the vulnerable, empower, educate, and engage communities, and persist with the same tools that we have been advocating since day one. Find isolate, test, and care for cases, and trace and quarantine their contacts.
Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, WHO technical lead on COVID-19, reminded how the virus spreads and that countries have the tools to prevent that. Just find and implement the best practices.
This virus likes to transmit between people in close contact with one another. It likes to cause outbreaks. And if we know where those outbreaks are going to happen, and we have clues on this, because these outbreaks happen in enclosed settings, they happen where people spend prolonged periods of time together, oftentimes where there's poor ventilation. If we could prevent that from happening, we can get ahead of this virus.
The UN agency also reiterated the importance of frequent cleaning of surfaces in battling the spread of the virus.
And we know that fomites or touching of contaminated surface is one of the ways this virus can transmit. And so what we worry about is if someone is infected and they release the virus and it falls onto a surface, if it isn't disinfected and someone touches that surface, and if they don't wash their hands or use an alcohol-based rub, if they touch their eyes or their nose or their mouth, they can infect themselves that way. So we continue to recommend these basics. We continue to recommend that there's environmental cleaning that is happening in areas where there's known patients, of course, in hospitals and in homes where people are being cared for, but also making sure that we disinfect surfaces regularly. And again, there's good news that disinfectants like bleach work very well at removing the virus.
WHO also reminds that basic measures must remain in place, such as carrying alcohol-based rub and frequent and proper hand washing to avoid infecting oneself. Nina Armilio, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of more than 37.8 million confirmed cases in 189 countries, regions, and sovereignties. A sovereign state in Oceania, the Solomon Islands, lost its COVID-free status last week when a student repatriated from the Philippines tested positive for the disease. The World Health Organization reiterates this is an uneven pandemic. The WHO chief explained that countries have responded differently and affected differently. Almost 70% of the cases reported globally were from 10 countries, and almost half of all cases were from just 3 countries, namely the USA, India, and Brazil. Meanwhile, in Brazil, a decline in numbers have been observed months after its opening. According to the WHO, they are pleased to see the numbers in Brazil are stabilizing and going down. But the UN agency has a warning.
But as we've all learned at the School of Hard Knocks over the last number of months, is the fact that disease is on the way down does not mean that disease will not pick up again, and very, very quickly in certain circumstances.
Dr. Mike Ryan reiterated that all countries have to remain vigilant, adding that no country is out of the woods yet. The COVID-19 pandemic has taken the lives of over 1.08 million people around the world. Almost 26.3 million patients have recovered from the disease. Thanks be to God.
Passengers on public transportation may soon travel on a vehicle 1 seat apart. Also, people may expect that the age group allowed to go out may be expanded. Rosalie Cos details why.
During the first cabinet meeting of President Rodrigo Duterte yesterday after 7 months, the chief executive approved all the recommendations of the economic cluster on further reopening of the Philippine economy. This include the expansion of public transportation capacity, such as the 1 seat apart rule or allowing passengers to sit together with plastic barrier or UV light.
Inaprobahan po ng gabinete na sa pampublikong transportasyon, 1 seat apart na po ang distansya.
This is effective after publication in Official Gazette. However, the palace reiterates the rules to be strictly enforced in public transportation. such as wearing of proper face mask, wearing of face shields, no talking and no eating, adequate ventilation, frequent and proper disinfection, no symptomatic passengers, and appropriate physical distancing. Aside from this, the President has also approved his Cabinet's recommendations for a more incremental opening of businesses, shorter curfew hours, multiple work shifts for workers, as well as the gradual expansion of age groups allowed to go out. The palace hopes that by strictly observing the health protocols, people could prevent getting COVID-19 while the economy is further reopened.
Tingin ko, after 6-7 months of lockdown, alam na natin ang gagawin. Mask, iwas, hugas.
Rosa Licods, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Education urges the public to report errors in student learning materials. It has launched the DepEd Error Watch initiative. Dante Amento tells us why.
The Department of Education say they are not content with seeing the reports of errors in DepEd materials on different social media platforms. According to USEC Alain Pasqua, they would rather have direct reports coming from the netizens. Through various online platforms, the public can now report errors in student learning materials, such as their self-learning modules and broadcast lessons, in order to correct them right away.
We are asking the help coming from the private sectors, coming from volunteers, even coming from critics to help us QA or quality assure all the video episodes that we will be producing.
Complaints may be directly reported to appropriate DepEd officials or offices. Just send an email to errorwatch@deped.gov.ph or send a message via text, Viber, Messenger, or work chat.
This is one way of ensuring that all comments coming from the citizens will be entertained and will be addressed thoroughly.
Meanwhile, Education Secretary Leonor Briones admits that among the challenges they are facing are fake news and circulating erroneous learning materials being associated with DepEd.
Pagharap nitong mga maling balita, mga paninira ng maliit na grupo na napipick up naman sa social media, at maski maliit sila, kunti sila, nakaka-damage sila sa credibility ng institusyon.
DepEd says it is engaging some partners from the private sector and the academe to help in the quality assurance of learning materials. Dante Amento, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority has solutions to flooding when it pours in the National Capital Region. But a scenario of a floodless Metro Manila during heavy rain won't happen. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, says that flooding during heavy downpour in the National Capital Region is inevitable because it is a catch basin. According to MMDA spokesperson Assistant Secretary Celine Pialago, the agency utilizes 64 pumping machines across the metropolis, which help the flood subside faster.
Kung ang goal natin ay hindi na babahain ang Metro Manila, hindi ho mangyayari. Babahain ho tayo, no? Dahil napakababa ho ng sea level sa atin. And at the same time po, alam natin catch basin tayo. Pero ang tanong, kung dati ho, ang tagal ng baha ay nasa 2-3 oras. Pero ho ngayon, in a span of 45 minutes, napapahupa na ho natin yung tubig baha.
The MMDA explains that trash, even as small as candy wrappers, plastic bags, and styrofoam, contribute to the buildup of flood. Trash block the drainage system, therefore causing flood, making roads impassable. The MMDA identifies 20 road areas in Metro Manila affected by flooding, which include major thoroughfares like EDSA, Commonwealth, C5, and others.
Yung basura, sir, talagang madami pa din, ano? Pero, for example, yung ilang mga esteros natin, kapag hindi naman po tag-ulan, nakaka-average po tayo na at least 1 dump trucks to 2 dump trucks a day. Yan ho ang average niyan. Pero kapag bumubuhos po ang ulan, kulang po ang overnight para ho malinis natin yung mga esteros natin na puro basura.
Authorities appeal to the public to strictly observe discipline in disposing of trash to help prevent further flooding, especially during the rainy days. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The National Center for Mental Health Crisis Hotline has been receiving an alarming number of calls amid the pandemic. Our health correspondent, Aiko Miguel, reports why.
Based on the National Center for Mental Health Crisis Hotline report, on October 6, a total of more than 7,000 Filipinos received mental health services through the hotline. From March to October, the daily average number of calls the NCMH receives is 32 to 37. That's equivalent to 907 calls monthly. 53 of the calls are suicide-related. More females have called than males with ages ranging between 18 and 30. According to the Health Department's Disease Prevention and Control Bureau, this is an alarming spike which should be resolved by experts and families of callers experiencing depression, anxiety, and stress during this pandemic. According to the DOH, there has been a 50% increase from last year in the number of people seeking help for mental health. Based on the report of the Philippine Mental Health Association, the main reasons why Filipinos are stressed out are workload, financial and family problems like conflict and physical separation.
The statistics really were rising up, no, in terms of anxiety reasons for calling, which is number one talaga, is anxiety related, and this could be attributed to those who have difficulty, of course, adjusting to the situation, the work, financial difficulties as of the moment.
Experts advise the public to accept the situation and resolve problems, especially within the family. Employers should give their employees guidance and counseling and check their situation when it comes to dealing with stress while juggling work and responsibilities at home, because work from home setting is harder to cope with. According to Dr. Salvador Vista, chairman of the Department of Psychiatry of the Asian Hospital and Medical Center, there must be conversations within families, especially teenagers, because they are part of the group vulnerable to depression.
The first thing we need to work on, my dear friends, is communicate with your family first. There are some members of our family who are in the adolescent range, and they really need to connect with others.
Dr. Vista also added it is important to maintain a sound body and mind and a steadfast faith during this pandemic.
The situation that we're in can really be dealt with medically perhaps, or maybe politically perhaps, or maybe socially perhaps. But at the end of the day, it's really God whom we need to focus on. And I guess I'll end there.
Those who wish to consult and seek help may call the National Center for Mental Health Hotline 0917-899-USAP or 989-USAP. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology wants Congress to increase its budget by 18 billion pesos. Joanne Nano will join us tonight to explain why live. Yes, Joanne?
Arlene, internet connectivity has been more in demand during this COVID-19 pandemic as people opt to work from home and use virtual conferences, and as students learn online instead of face-to-face. The poor internet service in the Philippines is commonly associated with a limited number of cell towers and the tedious process of how telecommunication companies complete requirements and permits. In a recent Senate budget hearing on the proposed 2021 budget of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, it was tackled that internet connection in the country could be faster and cost cheaper if a government-owned broadband network is established. But the national government isn't able to do so because of a limited budget. Here's the statement of Commissioner Gamaliel Cordova of the National Telecommunications Commission.
In all other countries ay talaga pong gumagastos ang government sa national broadband. Ang nangyayari po sa ibang bansa ay ang gumagastos po at nagpapatayo ng infrastructure at ang gumagastos po ng capital expenditure ay ang government, and all the telcos ay nagli-lease lang po from the national government. That is the model that is being used in other countries, kaya po medyo maganda ang service nila. Wala po silang problema sa right of way at wala rin po silang problema sa mga permits because it's the national government that is doing all of that.
Under the DICT's proposed 2021 budget, only 902 million pesos is allocated by the Development Budget Coordination Committee for the National Broadband Program. This is way too low compared with the budget allocations for other countries' national broadband program, such as South Korea, which is among the top countries globally with the fastest internet speed. The DICT is asking Congress to increase its budget by 18 billion pesos to be used for the national broadband program. With this additional funding, the DICT says it can improve internet service through the establishment of more fiber optic and wireless connections. But with a limited budget, Harleen, pushing for the national broadband program will remain as a huge challenge for the DICT. Let us hear the statement of Assistant Secretary Emmanuel Reyca-Igik of the Department of Information and Communications Technology.
Kung gagawa po tayo ng fiber backbone, first mile, middle mile, doon tutuhog ang mga tore ng mga telco. So, hindi lang dadami, mumura. Kaya po mahal, kasi ang mahal po yung paglatag pa po ng fiber kung saan magkakaroon ang tore. So kung ang government po ang maglalatag ng fiber, so ang mga smart globe dito, doon na lang sila kakabit sa ating mga fiber. Tapos doon din sila mag-distribute to the residentials. We do not wish to compete with the private sector market.
Harleen?
Joanne, apart from the National Broadband Program, what other projects is the DICT requesting additional funding for?
Harleen, the DICT is also asking Congress for a more than 3 billion peso additional budget for free Wi-Fi program in order to provide internet access in many other far-flung areas. Several senators have committed to deliberate the additional funding for the DICT once the proposed 2021 national budget gets tackled in the plenary session. Harleen?
Thank you so much, Joanne Nano reporting live. Now, here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. Tropical depression Ophel is affecting parts of the country. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 3 p.m. today, the center of TD Ophel was located at 135 kilometers east-southeast of Giwan, Eastern Samar. It has maximum sustained winds of 45 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 55 kilometers per hour, moving north-northwest at 15 kilometers per hour. This will bring rains and gusty winds over Samar provinces and Sorsogon. Tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 has been placed over Sorsogon, northern Samar, the northern portion of eastern Samar, and areas in the northern portion of Samar. Possible raising of wind signal number 1 may be included in the next bulletin for Albay, Ticao Island, and the rest of eastern Samar and Samar. Meanwhile, Mindanao, Mimaropa, and the rest of Visayas and of Bicol region will experience light to moderate rains due to combined effects of Ophel and the southwest monsoon or hanging habagat. According to Pag-asa, Ophel will likely remain in tropical depression category while traversing the southern portion of southern Luzon. It is also forecast to reach tropical storm category within 48 hours once it emerges over the West Philippine Sea. And partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers will prevail over Metro Manila and the rest of Luzon due to localized thunderstorms. Possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms. The hottest temperature recorded today at the Pag-asa weather station in Quezon City was at 3:30 in the afternoon with 32.4 degrees Celsius, and the coldest at 5 in the morning with 24.3 degrees Celsius.
More than 4,000 policemen have been dismissed from service, while almost 8,000 others have been suspended. Our police correspondent, Leah Ilagan, reports why.
The Philippine National Police leadership confirms that 4,591 policemen have found guilty of irregularities in performing their duties and dismissed from service. Of that number, 549 have found to be involved in illegal drugs. 410 have tested positive for using prohibited drugs, while 139 are involved in illegal drugs activities. On the other hand, 7,888 caps have been suspended and 846 others have been demoted. PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan says that other PNP personnel have been charged with grave misconduct, serious neglect of duty, serious irregularity, malversation, dishonesty and graft and corruption.
We will not tolerate any wrongdoings of our people. Okay? As what I've said, kung wala kang rason, we will have to arrest you, file cases against you, put you in jail.
Cascolan adds that 600 cops have been penalized by forfeiture of salary. 119 have been restricted in their quarters, and 205 are not enjoying their privileges.
The PNP internal cleansing program doesn't stop there, rather it will continue to be implemented with greater zeal and commitment in the best interest of transparency and accountability in public service.
Among those in restrictive custody is former PNP Custodial Center Chief, Police Lieutenant Colonel Jigar Noceda, who had been slapped with charges by former Ozami City Vice Mayor Nova Princess Parohinog for alleged sexual assault. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The final deliberations and approval of the implementing rules and regulations of the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 are expected tomorrow, according to Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara. The officials say they will also discuss the promulgation of the IRR together with the Anti-Terrorism Council. Guevara has said they will release the final IRR before the October 16 deadline. The law was signed by President Rodrigo Duterte on July 3, 2020 and replaced the Human Security Act of 2007 on July 18, 2020.
Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Investigation begins its probe into the riot that occurred in the New Bilibid prison Friday last week, where 9 persons deprived of liberty died. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara says he is waiting for reports from Bucor Chief Gerald Bantag and the NBI before taking appropriate action. Bucor submitted its initial report yesterday, but Guevara ordered the Bureau to investigate more thoroughly. And for the news abroad, here's Stephanie C. reporting live from Hong Kong.
Good evening, William. Johnson & Johnson temporarily pauses its multinational COVID vaccine trial to investigate why one participant in the study has fallen ill. The company says that an independent review board will check if the person's unexplained symptoms are related to the injection. As a precaution, it has suspended recruitment to the Phase 3 trial. The company explains that in large trials with tens of thousands of volunteers, it is expected that some may become unwell during the study period. Johnson & Johnson says it could not give more details about the participant for privacy reasons. In the UK, the unemployment rate rose from 4.1% to 4.5% in August as the pandemic hit jobs figures show. An estimated 1.5 million people were unemployed in the period. That's 209,000 more than a year earlier, the Office for National Statistics said. The Bank of England has predicted unemployment will hit 7.5% by the end of the year as the government's furlough scheme comes to an end. Most expect unemployment to rise further after the government's furlough scheme is replaced with a less generous wage support package in November.
China's state-owned power plants and steel makers has suspended purchases of Australian coal, which has left several Australian vessels stranded at Chinese ports. coal traders and energy providers who requested to be unidentified confirmed in industry media websites that China's custom authorities have issued verbal orders to halt buying and offloading thermal coal from Australia with immediate effect. According to Deepak Kannan, a thermal coal analyst from S&P Platts, a global commodities newswire platform, there are several vessels carrying Australian coal waiting at Chinese ports for more than a month now, as generally custom clearances have been very slow. Indications from sources are that the number of vessels waiting at Chinese ports has increased quite a bit of late. Some reports have suggested that as much as 7 million tons of coal are on board vessels waiting along Chinese coast, up from the usual 4 to 5 million tons normally seen during this period of time along the coast. The federal government of Australia is aware and has seen the reports, but has not been able to verify the import ban as it has not been notified of any formal written direction from Chinese officials. And so the Trade Minister Simon Birmingham discussed the issue with Australia's resources industry, which had previously faced occasional disruptions to trade flows with China. Trade Minister Birmingham said, "It's well known that on multiple occasions this year, we have sought a ministerial dialogue with China, and they have not been willing to reciprocate. Our door remains wide open for that. In the meantime, we will operate through the normal diplomatic channels where we can, and as I say, work with Australian industry as well." Steph?
Marvi, we have also recently reported about China's imposed import tariffs on Australian agriculture like beef and barley. Does the Australian government still have assurance that China would continue to honor its free trade agreement?
Steph, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said that it is in China's interest as well to maintain trade connections with Australia. He added, "The key point is the relationship with China is a very significant one and a mutually beneficial one. Australia is China's largest supplier of thermal coal, providing up to 35% of the mineral used to generate electricity. Coking coal, which is used to make steel, surged by 67% in the first half of 2020 as China relied on infrastructure to recover from the coronavirus. We are yet to see if this is an economic retaliation and a politically motivated move against the Morrison government, as Beijing aims to reduce consumption and carbon emissions." Steph?
All right, Marvi, thank you for that report live from Australia. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has repeatedly emphasized that there is a clear distinction between her personal life and the way she conducted her public office. She has expressly denied her awareness of the corruption activities that former Member of the Parliament Daryl Maguire was involved in spite of her admission of their close personal relationship at the time when the corruption took place from 2012 to 2018. The NSW Independent Commission Against Corruption, or ICAC, is investigating allegations that from 2012 to 2018, former Member of the Parliament Daryl Maguire was engaged in conduct that involved breach of public trust by using his public office and involving his duties as a member of NSW Parliament, the use of Parliament resources to improperly gain benefit from himself. The ICAC will continue its investigation in the coming weeks, while there is no apparent sign that Premier Berejiklian will be ousted by her own party. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Hong Kong and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Stephanie C., reporting live from Hong Kong.
Some experts in Boston, Massachusetts reveal their in-depth review of interconnections between COVID-19 and cancer. They find that patients with cancer are among the most risk of developing severe forms of the illness. Jovic Bermas details why.
Researchers at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and other institutions looked at the state of science between the interrelatedness of COVID-19 and cancer in the most comprehensive survey to date. This new study, published online by Cancer Cell, summarizes findings in 4 areas such as the effects of COVID-19 to the biology of cancer, changes in patient care caused by the pandemic, cancer research, and its insights applicable to the treatment of COVID-19. Dr. Ziad Bakuni of Dana-Farber, co-lead author of the study, said COVID-19 has been responsible for killing more than 1 million people worldwide. He adds patients with cancer are among the most risk of developing severe forms of the illness due to a weakened immune system, either as a result of cancer itself or the therapies used to treat it.
So it's important to understand if there's any sort of overlapping biology there that might explain why these patients are doing poorly with COVID.
Cancer patients treated with immune-stimulating T-cell therapies can develop a side effect known as cytokine release syndrome, similar to COVID-19's cytokine storm, an over-aggressive immune response which can cause lung and other tissue damage. While the COVID-19 pandemic greatly reduced face-to-face consultations between patients and physicians, it has caused a surge in the use of telemedicine, which according to some studies can be just as effective as in-person meetings. Researchers also found ways such as telehealth, use of e-signatures, shipment of oral medications to adapt to challenges brought about by the pandemic, where many cancer research and trials have been put on hold to limit the spread of COVID-19. The study's authors also noted, though COVID-19 and cancer are fundamentally different in their origin, insights gained in cancer research showed relevance to fighting the new coronavirus, such as cancer drugs that can be potentially used to alleviate COVID-19's cytokine storm.
We sort of have a very wide spectrum of expertise that have allowed us in this review to sort of very comprehensively look at the evidence from multiple points of view, from the patient perspective, from the physician perspective, and from the cancer scientist perspective.
Jovic Burmas, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, October 13, 2020. I am Horlene Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.